everyone, and welcome to Educational Webinar Jam. Today's session is presented by Dr. Arlene Campbell. Her name is Dr. Arlene, and her name, each letter denotes a characteristic of hers. A stands for educate and other motherhood for marginal groups in underserved communities. R is raised by a lovely family and a community in Montreal, Canada. L is longevity, learner, laughter. And E is for endurance, the ability to withstand adversity. N is need-free, is equality equator. Welcome, Dr. Arlene. We are honored to have you at our platform today. Any questions will be answered at the end of the webinar. You are kindly requested to hold them till the end. Dr. Arlene, the floor is all yours.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Wonderful. This is an absolutely a delightful moment. And I'd like to, first of all, thank Maria for organizing and inviting me to this presentation so that I can share with you some research. It's an absolutely glorious day here in Eastern Ontario. The sun is shining brightly. The sky is a brilliant blue, and there's a ton of snow. As a matter of fact, the snowplow just charged down the street. So it is a beautiful winter wonderland here in Eastern Ontario at 8 o'clock in the morning. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today. As you can see, I'm going to present my research that was conducted in 2017 in Guyana, South America. Here's the agenda: territorial acknowledgement, a Black History Month acknowledgement, background information, followed by a video on Guyana, CUSO International, a welcome to Kuru Kuru Training Center, what is the issue, why is it important, who participated, what did I discover, and followed lastly by the Q&A. So let's start with the territorial acknowledgement. This is something that we do here in Canada, and I would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this home. At this point too, I'd also like to acknowledge that this is the 25th anniversary as the official national observation of Black History Month here in Canada. This is an important month when we recognize and acknowledge all the contributions and achievements and ongoing past and present achievements and contributions of people of African heritage. So let's proceed. We're going to start with a quick poll, and I'd like you to please just share the link that's in the chat box, or you can scan to participate. It's very quick. It's a yes or no, and I'm only giving you basically like 3 seconds to answer. So here we go. Have you ever heard of the country Guyana? Okay, it looks like we have about a 50-50 split there. Oh, no, it's now more like a 33%. Looks like it's changing. Continues to change. Okay, this is it. Final answer. We have no 71% and yes 29%. Super. Now, my next question is, again for the poll, how familiar are you with this topic? Very familiar, somewhat, or not familiar? Again, let's do this in 3 seconds. 2 and 1. So we have a 50-50 split that's now realigning itself, reconfiguring, and we end up with a somewhat for 71% and not familiar 29%. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to give you a glimpse of Guyana, and here's a short clip, YouTube clip, that I'd like you to watch very carefully because I'm going to ask you one question about the capital city.
Guyana's heart lies with its beautifully exotic inland regions, which are in stark contrast to the hustle and bustle of Georgetown and the coast. Guyana's capital owes much of its distinctive architecture to the colonization of the French, Dutch, and then the British. From the impressive town museums to the Grand Cathedral, reputedly the tallest freestanding wooden building in the world, the city's markets are vibrant with the flurry of everyday life, and the beautiful botanical gardens offer a tranquil retreat. Guyana is the only country in South America where English is the official language, with a rich diversity of people. And on the coast, there's a distinctive Caribbean culture. The country's strong indigenous culture is evident as soon as you travel inland from Georgetown or along the lower Essequibo. Here, Fort Island, home to the Dutch government in the 18th century, is built on one of 365 islands on this vast waterway, the third largest river in South America. The river's remote feel is punctuated by various island resorts with inviting beaches. Deeper into the interior, there are welcoming community lodges where you can explore the rainforest or move south towards the rolling savannah. Here you really get a feel for the wonderful eco-projects that are happening in the country. It also gives you a chance to meet people from the 9 indigenous groups who will welcome you to this unique and fascinating culture.
Okay, here's the pop quiz. One question. What is the capital city of Guyana? Again, you can scan to participate, and the link is shared with you in the chat box. Yes, that's correct. Georgetown. Well done, everybody. And the British assigned the name during their rule. So my next question is, what do you think the word gaff means? That's part of the title of my research paper.
You can use the chat box to answer.
Yes, thank you for that reminder, Maria.
I think no one is aware of it. You have to give away.
Okay. Well, I'll leave that for now, and maybe during the presentation,
it seems we have some answers now.
Oh, there are some answers.
Some people are saying it's a mistake.
Yeah.
Potentially a mistake. A blunder.
Oh, okay. All right, well, let's proceed. Keep
Is
that
it
up here.
sorry, Dr. Arlene, Assalamu alaikum. Is it adolescent, I think, from your title? Because it is from your title.
It is indeed from my title. That's right.
Yeah. So is it adolescent? Right?
Is it
young females? Young females?
Oh, I see. You think it means adolescence, another word for
Yes.
adolescent. Oh, isn't that an interesting interpretation?
Yeah. Based on what you said. Okay, thank you. All right.
Oh, you're welcome.
So what means, Dr. Arlene?
Well, I'll tell you what it means. It actually means nonsense talk. It actually means when you're just chatting, and it's really gibberish, like it's nothing really important. That's what it is. It's nonsense. So let's proceed. So here, what is the issue and why is it important? So why did I decide to embark on this research? Well, the unemployment in Guyana has seen unprecedented increases, particularly when it affects our adolescents, and that is youth that are aged from 15 to 24. During the period that I was there in 2017, it was approximately 20. You see, it was approximately about 21.4. As you noted, from 2010, it's dropped significantly, but it's still very, very high because that accounts for 40% of the unemployment in the whole of Guyana. So youth unemployment has wider socioeconomic consequences, which are exacerbated by unequal gender relations. And as a result, the consequences are the following: unplanned pregnancies, lost future income and wages, psychological scarring, and crime. Now, technical vocational entrepreneurship training, also known as TVET, has become an important learning system in Guyana to help target that high youth unemployment, because it's an institutional program that develops both soft and hard skills in an integrated development and delivery framework, and it seeks to improve livelihoods and inclusion into the world of work, supporting both community and individual agency. Now, Guyana has a philosophy of education from the Ministry of Ed in 2014 that states that education is generally regarded as a basic requirement for the socioeconomic transformation and advancement of societies. And notably, the Interagency Network for Education in Emergencies in 2011 also brings attention to the fact that there has been a lack of female inclusion, and that educational institutions not only need to cater to marginalized youth from remote communities in Guyana, but also engage in female participation. So in targeting these marginalized youth who come from all over the country in Guyana, of which there are 10 communities, 10 regions, as they call them, administrative regions. Most of these youth come from very, very remote communities. And they experience disenfranchised minority status, academic underachievement, staggering unemployment rates, poverty and lack of social support systems, alcohol and substance abuse, suicide, violence, and there are also ethno-racial tensions. Now, Tibet technical, vocational, entrepreneurship training has historically been very male-dominated, and they included the trades such as carpentry, welding, plumbing, etc. And that training specifically for females was generally offered in traditionally female-dominated activities in social and business skill programs. However, the critical and feminist pedagogy literature offers the following perspectives. They argue, and this is Gaskell, Griffin, Blake, Sultana, Simone et al., they argue that we need to develop educational practices that empower all students, regardless of gender, race, class, religion, and so on. And that's why the Guyanese government has gone forward to try to include these non-traditional choices and give them and offer opportunities for females. So as a CUSO volunteer in 2017, I was recruited as a curriculum methodology specialist on a 10-month assignment. And these were the key areas that I was responsible for. Designing and facilitating professional development workshops for instructors with the aim of improving methodology, creating and revising curriculum and instructional and assessment methods, conducting an organizational assessment to develop partnership objectives, and develop training resources. Now, I want to give you an idea of where I was situated during the time I was at Kuru Kuru Training Center. This is the road that leads into the actual campus of, I used to just abbreviate Kuru Kuru Training Center and call it Caduck. So after driving from Georgetown, which was approximately an hour away, on a very well-paved highway, then we would be, we'd have to go off onto this country road. Lots of potholes, very remote. And we would enter the compound of Caduck, Kuru Kuru Training Center. Now, it's set on a very large acreage of 773 acres, would you believe? It's just humongous. But we're really located right in the middle of a rainforest. There's absolutely nothing else around this campus. So this particular training center is a residential center. So all the students, of which there are approximately 240 at the time when I was there, they reside there in separate dorms, male, female, as well as the dorm supervisors and most of the administrative staff, as well as the instructors. Kuru Kuru is operated under the Ministry of Education, the Department of Culture, Youth, and Sport. Here's the administrative building. It's managed by a male administrator and a team of 2 senior training officers, of which there's 1 male and 1 female. So here is the mission statement. And I want you to pay particular attention to the highlighted words that I have here. To provide youth age 16 to 25 years old with vocational, entrepreneurial, and other life skills for personal and national development in a disciplined environment. Now, this word disciplined environment, I want you to keep at the forefront of your minds, please, as I continue with my presentation. Because the disciplined environment starts very early in the morning. And I would be awoken at 4:30. We all would be. We would be awoken at 4:30 every morning, regardless of whether it was a weekend or not, with a piercing siren. It's a siren that probably I would equate with like a fire alarm. And what happened is that we would wake up at 4:30, the students would wake up at 4:30, and they would have daily marching drills around the campus. And it would be basically in a military format. Now, Guyana, at the time when I was there, it was approximately, in terms of the temperature, it was in the high 30s. So, and I'm talking Celsius. So 35, 36. And even at 4:30 in the morning, it was still quite hot. Added to the fact that these students had to fall in, there was constant surveillance in other areas. Here are a couple of pictures I wanted you to see of the instructors. They offer a variety of different skill programs on a 10-month rotational basis. And the 10 months includes 2 months of field work. So there's business studies, carpentry, electrical installation, etc. There were 2 different skills that were not being offered at the time: garment construction, refrigeration, and air conditioning. Here are some more instructors. The program also included remedial English, mathematics, information technology, driver education, and an entrepreneurship program. Now, as I mentioned, as a volunteer with QSO International, I was recruited as a curriculum methodology specialist at Guru Training Center. But my previous positions in the university as a professor focused on interdisciplinary research interests that centered mainly on gender, relations, teacher education, and life history grounded in equity, diversity, and social justice. And I claim to be an other mother because that is an acceptance of responsibility for a child, not one's own, that may or may not be formal. It's a practice that stemmed from West African practice of communal lifestyles and interdependence. And it's a familial instability of slavery that engendered the adaptation of communality in the form of fostering children whose parents, particularly mothers, had been sold. And this tradition of communality gave rise to the practice of other mothering through the transatlantic migration and has reconfigured itself in the Americas. So why is this important? Well, I feel that the purpose of my independent qualitative study is to advance a new and deeper understanding of female trainees' perceptions and their aspirations embedded in their everyday social interactions. And so in my research, I seek to enrich all relationships that are integral to teaching learning opportunities at the residential institute. And to do so entails an inquiry of existing perspectives about gender and transformative education. So whilst it is important to understand the analytical independence of these concepts, the intersectionality is essential for building capacity throughout the broader community. And speaking of the broader community, many of these female trainees, the students at KKTC, Caduck, resided in the hinterland, which were remote communities, and they had never even ventured abroad outside of their villages. But at the same time, they were here to study a non-traditional occupational skill in a male-dominated program. So I was curious, and so my research was based around three theoretical questions. What did it look like and feel like to be a female trainee in a residential technical vocational education and training TVET setting? What were the young women's sentiments and experiences about their everyday realities? And how can Caduck better address the female trainees' socio-emotional, cultural, and academic development? So who participated? Well, there were 19 female trainees, and they self-identified as either Afro-Guyanese, Amerindian, mixed, and Indo-Guyanese. One participant identified as a single parent, and there was one participant who opted out of the focus group, the research project, halfway through. Now, my methodology was based on focus group interviews, because I find that focus group interviews are really great to open up discussions that are centered on perceptions of individuals in a very controlled type of environment. And my focus groups were conducted over a 4-week period. They were videotaped or audio taped, and that was according to the participants' preference. And in order to establish rapport with these young women, with the trainees, I initiated forest hikes with them. I engaged in volleyball games. I visited them in their classroom settings and student assemblies. And that was some of the ways that I was able to establish some kind of rapport and build trust and gain their confidence. Now, it was also important for me to mention that all the respondents responded to the same questions. And these focus groups usually lasted approximately 3 hours at a time. So the audio and the video recordings, they were transcribed, coded, and analyzed just to ensure that items and themes were captured and accurately defined. And all information was signed and authorized by the Ministry of Education, the Department of Culture, Sports, and Youth, as well as with the administrators. So all the informed consent was done according to the research protocols. So I find that in my research with voices of different participants, it's very important for me to focus on the fact that I do not at all change any of the responses that the students in this case give me, because I believe that their perceptions are what are an authentic way and a true reflection of their behavior and of their perceptions to my questions in the focus interviews. So you're going to be noticing in the upcoming slides that there is a dialect that they are accustomed to, that's how they speak, and I have treated it as such. And I have not at all changed it into standard English. So here's the first slide. I asked my trainees, my participants, why did they come here to begin with? And of course, there was a flurry of responses. I've just extracted a couple here for you. So B said, I came here to learn a trade in masonry so that I could know how to build blocks and build my own home. M replied, when I finish at KKTC here, I am able to do something for my family and make my family proud for what I've done. A continues by saying, and when I go home, I can mix blocks to make homes and help others to make blocks. G states, with my furniture making certificate, I would go home in my region to teach others. L, I came here to learn a skill in welding, to open up my own business, to help others repair broken down things. Now, I want to underscore these young women's responses by saying that it was very important for them that they not only acquire simply the knowledge and the skills, that I'm not underrating the knowledge and the skills by any stretch of the imagination, but it was the feeling of becoming someone in the eyes of the community. This to me was what was a very powerful effect when they were providing me with their answers. And this also has an effect on reducing the likelihood of continuing in an impoverished environment, and they can uplift others within the community. They can gain and sustain a level of ongoing income and wages. And the whole notion of self-esteem and empowerment is very, very critical to all of this. So here are a couple of research challenges that I encountered when I was conducting my research at Caduck. Remember, we're in a very remote community. So we're in a developing nation. There were very inconsistent, unreliable internet and Wi-Fi. There was frequent and prolonged power outages. I also experienced some cultural nuances and language communication, miscommunication on both sides, not only with the young women. I had to really, really listen and sometimes ask them to repeat what they said. And it would also happen with when they were speaking with me and they wouldn't always understand what I would say. So there was the, you know, the intonations, the accents, the nuances that were quite interesting. So I'm only presenting 3 questions out of the 10 questions to you today. The first is, who supported your decision to attend Caduck and adjust to your new life here? My second question, if you were the instructor, how would you redesign your course? And finally, what are your suggestions and some improvements at Caduck that would help trainees better adjust to residential life? So the first question was, who supported your decision to attend Caduck and helped you adjust to your new life here? Dee says, well, I called my mom. And she says, Mummy, I can't like this place. There's too little freedom, too much of rules and so on. But my mother told me, just cope with it. Just a few more months. It's not a year. X exclaims, and how my family supports me here at Caduck? They remind me to show up at class. They give me advice and encouragement. Overall, parents' visits were very infrequent or non-existent. Well, this had to do with, of course, the fact that these students had to travel so far, sometimes 9 hours by road travel, and some were even flown in from these remote communities. So the parents, because of lack of financial funds, were not able to visit. And if they did, it was very infrequent. But they offered tremendous support and guidance because there were constant communications in person or video chats, which played a pivotal role in providing solace, advice, and encouragement. So, as we know, communication is critical. It maintains important family ties. It provides a source of sustained socio-emotional development for the trainees. Family advice, it can also be attributed to an interesting discussion about Indigenous education. And I'm focusing on Indigenous education here because most of the trainees in my focus groups were from the Amerindian communities. And Indigenous education adopts passing on economic practices, cultural nuances, expectations, rituals, laws, and health practices through a variety of learning. And it could be through the creative arts, such as drama, song, dance, proverbs, storytelling. And often this was a form of learning which was integrated into normal daily social practices by listening, observing, practicing, and sometimes improving upon it. So despite the geographical isolation and lack of transportation options for these trainees, it was unfortunate that the KKTC administrators discouraged and restricted cell phone usage to weekends. This was really a bone of contention for the trainees. So I want you to just think so far and reflect, what are some insights? What are some things that have struck you so far? If you could just respond in 3 words in the chat box, please.
We're starting to have a few responses in the chat box.
Okay, we'll
And
continue.
we've got Cheryl Simmons who says very strict.
Thank you.
Nina Ahmed who says the early start.
Oh.
We've got Batul who says vision, ambition. Rabina who's saying values and practices. Adutun who's saying loneliness, regimented, male dominated. Terry who's saying education continues even though difficult circumstances. Maria is saying faith, progress. We've got someone saying helping out community, rigid regime. There's quite a few responses there.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, everybody. So let's continue. Very insightful. Question 2, if you were the instructor, how would you redesign your course? L proclaims, in business class, there should have more practicals because I learn more by doing than writing. More marketing skills where you learn by doing, like how you try to convince customers and show customer-friendly service. M responds, and take trainees to more educational tours rather than keeping them here and just talking and explaining of how it would look like to be in an organization. F states, this is a learning institution and I think they should have Wi-Fi and internet for homework and research. And T proclaims, allow the trainees to have their cell phones, which will enable them to get more information and to do their research and homework assignments whenever they're out of class. And in class, I would recommend computers for each student. Now, John Dewey's notion of experiential education advocates for concrete active learning. John Dewey was known as, you could say, the father of experiential education. And he proclaimed that it was really, really very critical for students to have hands-on learning. Excuse me. And this is what TVET has tried to emulate in their philosophy. Because Dewey developed this theory of experiential learning based on interaction, okay? Social interaction, which he thought was a critical component. And continuity, which refers to how past and present experiences influence one's future, while interaction refers to how one's current situation influence one's experience. So again, Dewey, in his notion of experiential education, focused on the quality of the experience through these concrete hands-on learning that directly relate to the learner's life, integrated, and this is important, with critical reflection about the learning process. So service learning, adventure learning, workplace internships are all examples of experiential education. So field trips to different local business and ministry centers, as well as invitations to guest speakers and experts, were some of the ways that Caduck tried to integrate experiential education. Now, trainees have voiced relevant concerns, however, about technology and the internet, or the lack of. And we know that the internet holds transformative potential, and that connectivity is a basic educational right because it affects the quality of teaching and learning, and laptops are essential teaching, learning, and assessment tools. The internet helps to collect data on instructors, students, and resources, which makes management and planning easier. And we know that technology brings students and the teams at schools, in educational institutions together with other training sites. And in this particular instance, there were 2 other TVET sites in Guyana, located, however, in the Georgetown area. But unfortunately, because of the internet, Wi-Fi connectivity, power outages, etc., Caduck was basically very isolated, and there was minimal connection and communication with the other training sites. And of course, the internet fosters a collaborative community with shared common goals and exchange of ideas, resulting in a professional development network. So So the lack of empowerment and voice that these trainees express reinforces the institution's embedded culture of compliance and deference. But nonetheless, they still have and do express some very viable insights that address the shortcomings in their program with the following observation. So question 3, our final question. What are your suggestions about improvement at Caduck to help trainees adjust to residential campus life? Well, B proclaims to have more medics and a lot more equipment so that we can be very curious. M states, Kurokuro needs more staff, more students to help give some advice. K replies, the rules here at Caduck are very disorganized. I don't really like it because sometimes they give punishment to other students and in public, like in front of the crowd, especially in assemblies. Even the CE, that's the head of the Caduck training center, he even calls the girl sourpuss in front of everyone, and it was very embarrassing. Sometimes you could see 2 staff who are bickering with each other, and sometimes they even curse us and call us names. F states, more games. We should socialize with each other rather than we don't just want to gaff. That's normal. We're already accustomed to it. A continues, the CE calls them up in front and tells them of their actions and behavior of what they did, and he would actually embarrass them. And Z replies, we should be guided and not controlled by the staff. So these comments elucidated a sense of powerlessness. These are expressions of their disapproval and strong sentiments about certain rules and regulations. They use explicit language such as unfair, annoyed, disorganized, embarrassed, name-calling, and there's that element of verbal and emotional abuse that existed in the form of public shaming. Now, shaming is connected to collective rules and expectations, and it's used as a basic tool by which societies create and maintain moral order. Shaming works through anticipated or real social sanctions that punish violators of group norms and rules. And it's been around forever. Collective punishment in the school system is when administrators, instructors try to use peer pressure to torment or guilt students into behaving. Historically, this notion of collective punishment, would you believe it originated during the Qing dynasty of China in the 2nd century BC. And it actually continued and was sanctioned as a military tactic by many other nations. I can think of, for example, it was used by Nazi Germany, Russian Revolution, the British Empire, India, Israel, and even South Africa. So it alienates students and it creates resentment towards authority figures. School authorities also have the tendency to see young people's behavior as the problem rather than symptomatic of deeper social and educational concerns based on the intersections of social class, ethnicity, patriarchy, and gender inequities. Not surprisingly, it is the poor, the working class, and the racialized Indigenous person who is invariably part of the most vulnerable. So how do these young female trainees cope with the lived stressful experiences, both on an educational and group basis? Well, the following comment suggests that one of the ways is that the males act out and the females drop out. Peace claims, well, for me, rules are good. But at the same time, everyone deserved their freedom. And I think the rules that they set is a bit too strict because you can't socialize. Certain things you can't do. Z states, you laugh a little hard, you're going to be getting extra duties which shouldn't be, because laughter is a medicine. Yes, we have rules, very sensible ones, says E, the basics, but it's too much for us. And sometimes the boys go out of control and do whatever they like because they don't have anything to do and the rules are too tight. And that the females feel away. They want to go home, all because of the rules and regulations.
Excuse me, Dr. Arlene, we have 5 minutes left for your webinar.
Thank you very much, Maria. At the heart of the matter is that when students are devalued or marginalized, they are likely to engage in acts of resistance or withdraw. So where's the attention of TVET to focus on the more humanistic goal of helping to foster happy, well-adjusted citizens? So my recommendations are the following. I think that TVET needs to develop new courses to address changing market needs and increase women's employment options and shift the focus to environmental sustainability. For example, in computer support, dental care, ecotourism, food and hotel management, forestry, and the like. Bloom's taxonomy. In reflecting on their schooling, trainees identified various learning and teaching styles that are more conducive to a more successful academic achievement. And using Bloom's taxonomy is an approach that would effectively reduce the dropout rate and increase positive images for these young women. I also felt that there was a need to address effective interventions in terms of wellness and mental health for coping strategies. And I thought that daily access to group yoga, meditation, prayer, and various music, art, drama therapy that reaches beyond the campus boundaries to engage multiple community partners would be helpful for these young women. And also to integrate the role of traditional healers with spirituality, counseling, and wellness practices to culturally support and engage young people. As we know, mentorship is very crucial. Establishing female mentorships in both the private and public sector, NGOs, and faith-based adjacent communities. And it's great that the University of Guyana just established a school of entrepreneurship. And I think that the TVET program in Guyana could promote a partnership with the university in terms of mentoring, tutoring, work study, and internship opportunities, which would be accessible through personal support networks and/or social media platforms. So there is evidence that school culture can be changed to foster positive norms and standards among students, develop a more pro-social, caring, inclusive, and positive environment, which in turn may lead to better liking of school, better motivation, and learning results. Teaching and discussing compassion, respect, ethics, nonviolence, and solidarity with students is an important step that needs to be taken at an early stage. Before we conclude with this video, I just wanted to point out that Berg in 1990 points out the importance of providing students who are considering a non-traditional occupation with special support services, job shadowing, counseling, in order to enhance their chances of completing their preparation. and that young women who are considering non-traditional options must learn about the widespread tendency for women to be paid less than men, even in non-traditional occupations. I think that knowledgeable instructors and educators must help these young women explore how resegregation into female occupational niches, minority status within male subcultures, job displacement, and implicit and explicit discrimination, how that can affect the quality of their working lives. So students, I think, need to hear about the rights and the inequitable distributions of privilege and authority. And for me, as a critical feminist educator, I think it's important to encourage students to ask disruptive questions, to reflect on their everyday learning experiences, and to examine taken for granted assumptions about appropriate work and family roles for men and women, and to consider alternative and equitable power sharing arrangements, both in the home and at work. You're now going to view a short clip about Caduck that was filmed in 2019, so that was a couple of years after I left.
Dr. Arlene, we don't have time for this. In fact, I will email this link to the attendees later with the certificate.
That sounds great, Maria. Thank you.
So if you have any questions, would you kindly please ask Dr. Arlene now? You can open your mics and reply and ask questions directly. We have 2 minutes before we finish up.
Hello everyone, and thank you so much for your presentation. Actually, I didn't have a question, but I would like to thank from Nepal, and it is really the insightful topic for we all, especially for the women.
Thank you, Nabina.
Thank you very much, Navina.
Do we have any more questions before we conclude?
One more. How many female students were there relative to the males, please?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you, Dr. Tone. There were 60 female participants out of 240, 60 female trainees rather, excuse me, out of 240 trainees at Caduck.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just have one question as well, Dr. Arlene. I was just wondering, do you think this kind of strategy would be useful in other third world countries? Would this research be applicable?
So thank you. Is it Afaf?
Yes.
Thank you very much for your question. Are you referring to the recommendations that I'm making?
Yes, certainly, and your entire education, the research that you've presented throughout, especially for women.
I definitely would recommend it, and not only in developing nations of half, but as a matter of fact, I think that a whole re-examination, reimagining of the philosophy of Tibet in light of many different paradigms that have arisen through critical feminist research, through transformative education and leadership training, in terms of equity, diversity, and inclusion. I believe that all of these different ideologies and philosophies need to be inculcated within the Tibet framework. and that it would be useful throughout the world, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, certainly. I would totally agree.
Thank you.
I think we will conclude the session here, Dr. Arlene. Thank you once again for giving us this honor in presenting your research at a platform. And we look forward to more of your research papers sharing with us in future. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And we hope to see you in our upcoming webinars. We have yes.
I would just like to express a final thank you to everybody for your participation and your attention. And if you ever have any questions, my business card is there and you can feel free to contact me. I want to wish everybody a healthy and safe day, and keep well.
Thank you so much. Bye for now.
Bye.